It's another week, another after show. Guys, welcome back to the Geeks and Company. My name is Jeff. That over there is that Valkyrie girl, also known around here as Editor Megan. And if you've been following along with us so far, we are on a rewatch of The Legend of Vox Machina, Season 1. This will be Episode 3. If you are new here, welcome. Thanks for joining us and tuning into the channel and such. What we are doing is a rewatch of The Legend of Vox Machina. Both Megan and I have seen the show in its entirety. We're current on it. Preface, we've not watched any of the Critical Role stuff online. We've not watched the campaign, so we only know the show from the show. We're on a rewatch, hoping to pick up some stuff we maybe missed before. If you're watching this for the first time, don't worry. We're not going to drop any massive spoilers or anything like that. But if you are joining us on a rewatch, then feel free to throw some comments in below on what about this episode that you maybe picked up on a rewatch that you missed the first time. Megan, did you watch the episode? And before we get started, what was your overall impression of the episode? You said you had some thoughts and feelings about this one.
There's definitely a lot less that happened this time. The first two episodes had so much going on, and this one was very one event, one plot point. We're going to start digging into emotions and backstories and things.
In fact, we start off with something that neither one of us really love. It's a flashback. Now, it is a bit of a weird flashback. It kind of jumps all over the place. It's not necessarily like a straight line narrative type of thing. And there's a good reason for that. Is it turns out Percy was dreaming. So the flashback is Percy's, and we don't get a lot of information in the flashback, and I'm trying to make sure I don't sort of like give away knowledge that I already have as to what's happening. I think it could be fairly said, though, some bad shit happened seemingly in the past that Percy is having some recurring dreams about.
Oh, that Percy.
Yeah. I don't know if you caught it, by the way. We do get a glimpse as he's getting up out of bed and going to wander the halls after he's woken up with this bad dream.
The mask beside the bed.
We do get our first glimpse of the Plague Doctor mask that's beside his bed, and that is going to play a factor later on in this episode. Of course, as he's going wandering the halls, somebody hears him wake up and comes out to check on him.
It's Vax. She wants to make sure that he's okay.
Vax makes sure that he's okay and looks concerned. He's super. He's super not okay. Now we flash forward to the next morning, and guess who's a morning person when nobody else is a morning person?
Of course, Caleb is the morning person. She is the morning person. Like, of the characters, I mean, I could see some of them also being morning people, but Kayla's like the most morning of morning people.
Yes, and thus far of the group that's there, she is clearly the only morning person. It looks genuinely confused that nobody else is as bright and chipper as she is in the morning, and they're all looking at her like, fuck this bitch.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly. The boys are having a bit of a game that they like to call ball tag, which I'd love to tell you, this is the only occurrence of that in this particular episode. It is not. If you are a boy and you're watching this, you probably have an indication of what I'm talking about. We're not going to go into greater detail. Punching is involved and much pain ensues. And throughout the course of all of this, as everybody's still kind of grumpy and Keith is so chipper, Percy is a bit of a prissy bint. I mean, he's very like, just for one morning, I would like to sit here and enjoy my breakfast without you louting about. Like, he's very much... Yep. Like the proper English, even though he doesn't have the English accent per se, but the proper English prissiness that I think they're really trying to establish this early with him, especially with how this episode sort of turns out. They want you to see Percy as a very constrained, conservative, prim, and proper guy.
Yes, that is definitely the energy that they are making sure comes across. Yes.
They do get a visit at the keep. That is, by the way, kind of falling apart a little bit. The keep is not in good keeping. They get a visit from Allura. She's I don't think they're very handy at the end of the day.
No, they're not.
No. Allura shows up, and in fact, to get in, Grog has to essentially break down their own door so that she can come into the keep and talk to them. And she reminds them that they have a party that they have to go to, but it's much more than a party. All these visiting dignitaries from the lands all over Tal'Dorei are going to be there to look into some sort of a pact of some kind to, I don't know, mutual protection pact, I suppose, is what it's going to be.
Lords and ladies and diplomats being diplomaty.
So they all get dressed up, and they all look fantastic. Even Scanlan, who has a rainbow-hued codpiece on
it's so bad.
to go with his wonderful outfit.
It's terrible.
Now, there is some laughs played up here quite a bit throughout the initial, where it's very obvious that Vox Machina, to a member other than Percy, has never been invited to a state dinner, a party of this. So now I would, and I know it's being played for laughs, and I get it. And there are some genuinely funny moments as they're, making their way. But I mean, I don't think you need to know that you're not in a pub or a saloon or a bar to know that some of the antics you're doing, like draining glasses and smashing them on the ground, is probably going to be frowned upon.
Yeah.
By the higher ups, but they still go on their merry way of being louts and drunks and idiots for the most part. None more so than Scanlan, as per usual. But then they start announcing the dignitaries that have arrived, and one particular couple gets announced that seems to have irked Percy.
Lord and Lady Briarwood from Whitestone.
Up until this point, we haven't gotten any of Percy's backstory, so we don't know why he's triggered, but triggered he most definitely is.
The animated angle of it being like here on his face was very was a lot.
Dude's dealing with some shit. Vax, seeing this, they have a brief conversation, and Vax is like, well, I'm gonna go sneak up to their rooms and find out what's going on, because clearly there's something happening. Maybe I can find something. They then the rest of the group runs into, I believe it was Lady Allura. It might have been Kima, because they do run into both of them during the course of, and they ask after Vax, to which Scanlan replies,
he's got the squirts.
Vax has the squirts, which, I mean, to be fair, kills any more conversation or questions about that in the first place.
No further clarification is asked after that.
Only problem really is Grog thinks that's actually the case, which comes in a little bit later, which was actually a funny part of that particular story. Like, Vax is caught in the room with them, and he's got the squirts. Terrible. How terrible. Before the our guys are seated, sans Vax, we do get an image of Vax up, trying to sneak his way to the Briarwood's room. He's avoiding a couple of guards, but then he needs a distraction, and he does something that I haven't seen him do up until now, and I don't remember him doing for the rest of the show. What did he do?
Becomes a snake.
A legitimate, like, he takes his belt off and he throws it on the ground, and it turns into a snake, and it makes the guards leave the doorway, and he walks in.
The
snake slithers back in and up around his waist and becomes a belt again.
It sure does.
This does tend to happen, again, no spoilers, but this does tend to happen every now and then where someone will show off this amazing ability, and then it's never used again. So it's never brought up again. It was never brought up before. It's never used again. I have a feeling, unless I'm misremembering the rest of the show, I don't think this has ever occurred again.
No.
Kind of handy.
I don't remember any other snake belt.
So Percy is, of course, rifling through, their stuff. And then we're back to the dinner table. And, like, again, Percy is just like, he can't speak. He's so triggered right now. Like, he's such in an emotional black hole that he's just staring a hole through Delilah Blackwood and beside her Silas. But then Briarwood. What did I say?
Blackwood.
Blackwood's and Brackens from Game of Thrones. Totally different thing.
Yep.
Not
okay. Wrong fantasy genre.
Not the same thing, kids. We then get kind of a hint as to where some of this might be going as the king starts making mention of Whitestone, and like, people are going in and they're not coming out, and I'm of a mind to send a garrison of guards over there to see what's going on. And then Silas gives him the fucking Obi-Wan Kenobi, like, you don't need to send any guards to our, and he's like, I don't need to send any guards. You're going to offer us protection. We're going to offer you protection. So we do find out that Silas has some freaky Jedi mind trick powers, which come across more, I guess, which I guess we're going to see here in a moment, but more like maybe freaky vampire type powers.
He's got that thrall.
His eyes get all glowy. The opposing guys get all glowy. By the way, nobody sees this except for Keyleth.
Yeah,
she gets a sense of
them like,
what just transpired, and that seems weird. Excuse me. Interestingly enough, so we get to see that transpire, and then of course the way the show is set up sometimes, same thing, I get why they do it, because they want to make sure they keep the humor going. But Scanlan actually senses there's this weird lull in the conversation and asks after someone's beads, and then mentions he's got a similar set of beads himself, to which it takes Keyleth a moment to figure out what he's talking about, and she's immediately grossed out because we're still in wholesome Keyleth mode.
We are still in wholesome Keyleth mode.
Yep.
Her gut reaction is just, I've never seen you wear beads before the...
Yeah. Oh. Those kind of beads. I would love to tell you guys, this is the first reference to these beads in this episode, and it is. I would like to tell you it's the last reference. It is not in this episode. Boy, howdy, is it ever not. We'll get there,
Scanlan
kids.
is at his most Scanlan-y in this episode.
He really is. Now, at this point, for whatever reason, Delilah Briarwood decides she's going to spin this tale of how they became the caretakers of Whitestone. And in fact, that it was a fabrication because they were trying to protect the de Rollo name, that the de Rollos had advocated the throne and had abandoned their people, to which point Percy immediately, finally, has a reaction, leaps to his feet and screams, liar, to which the whole table has a collective gasp.
Yep.
And then Lord and Lady Briarwood are like, we're feeling a little awkward. We're just going to head back to our room now. And they do. And it's funny how they've kind of portrayed those two, because Silas is still very like, yeah, he freaking mind melded the king or whatever, but he's still very like, I don't know, stoic almost. And Delilah is clearly enjoying the reaction that she's getting.
Oh, yeah, she super is.
On their way back to the room, in fact, they're having a little private conversation, which, by the way, this doesn't happen a lot, where we're not actually seeing any of Vox Machina in this shot. It's specifically a shot,
actual, like
just the two of them. Silas mentions that the king was he must be weak-minded. The Jedi mind trick worked on that guy way easier than I thought it would. And Delilah does mention that the pup is the kid, the child is an unexpected bonus that we didn't think in our wildest dreams that he would be here, and he's here. So we're definitely seeing that there's a history here that's kind of being hinted at as far as that goes. The problem is they're headed back to their room. Who's in the room?
The room that Vax is still in.
He's rifling through their stuff. He finds a hidden bottom in a chest, and he's whipping out this book, and he's going through this book as fast as he can. I don't know if he's trying to speed read it or what he's trying to do, but as he's doing this, there's a weird breeze thing that sort of like blows out the fire. He hides the book, and when he turns around, Lord and Lady Blackwood are standing. Blackwood, I did it again. Briarwood are standing right there.
And who needs doors when you can be dramatic?
Yeah, I mean, just swoosh in and let out the fire. Delilah literally like reclines on the bed, like she knows what's up, right? She's like, I'm gonna enjoy this. She gets all like slinky and cat-like, and Silas is just like, boy, did you choose the wrong room to search.
You picked the incorrect place.
Yes. So first thing Silas does, gives him the old Jedi mind trick.
Yeah, which doesn't seem to work as well on...
Not as well. Again, I think we're seeing the difference between, just like with the Jedi, like it works really well on weak-minded and not so well on strong-minded people. Not to say the king is adult, but apparently the king is adult. While he's got him transfixed, though, he really leans into the whole vampire gig, bars his fangs, and bites Vax on the neck. And I got to admit, the first time I was watching this, I was like, fuck, is he a vampire now? Kids, here to tell you, he's not a vampire now. Just letting you know, he is not a vampire. So Silas is not an actual vampire, which we will learn as we're going through, but he certainly has a lot of the powers of one. So
even if he was, Vax wouldn't be a vampire from being bit. You need to drink a vampire's blood to become a vampire.
Well, see, that depends on the lore of vampires, because for some of them, the lore is a virus that's passed through the saliva and into the bloodstream, and now you're a vampire.
More a werewolf thing, but
watch Blade. That's how vampires are turned into vampires on Blade. So, I mean, Stephen King's Salem's Lot. I could name a whole bunch of vampire media where you just have to get
more of a werewolf thing
by a vampire. I'm just saying, in this case, okay, if you say so, I will not argue with you. You're wrong. Anyways. Vax is about to get essentially eaten by Silas, and of which Delilah is just going to enjoy and watch when he decides discretion is in fact the better part of valor. I need to get the flark out of here, and he jumps out the window.
Right out the window.
Lands in the fountain in the front of the courtyard. Excuse me. By this time, the rest of Vox Machina has figured out what's going on, that Vax is clearly in trouble. In fact, when Vax lands in the pool, he uses the safe word, which Grog had came up with as Chenga, whatever the balls Chenga means.
We don't know what Chenga is.
It's not Jenga, it is Chenga. It's CH is the word, Chenga. I don't know. Vox Machina is going to go get their weapons and get out to help. Speaking of Scanlan, he decides he's going to distract the dignitaries with his latest ballad, something about pull out my beads of love. I warned you, there were going to be more bead jokes. Here they are. It's not a joke, it's a fucking song. So we actually get the beginnings of this song while Vox Machina can't find the ticket for the weapons that they have checked because Vox Machina. So they just get Grog to knock out the coat check dude and grab their associated weapons and go out, and a fight ensues. Not before Pike decides she's going to heal Vax, which, I mean, if he did have a vampire infection, which is altogether possible, he wouldn't now because Pike has healed him.
I would say her healing actually worked. This is a rare instance of Pike's powers being on point for most of this time.
Now, what I was curious about, is this the first time we hear Vax call her Pickle? I don't remember if he called her Pickle in the first 2 episodes or not. I don't think he did.
Yeah, I was saying, I think it might be the first one.
I think a lot of them end up getting little nicknames. In fact, Vax is kind of a nickname, it's short form, and Vex and such too, but Keyleth gets her own little nickname, and a lot of them do. But for whatever reason, Pickle is my favorite of the nicknames. Like, it's better even than Buddies, which we're going to hear quite a bit later on throughout the series too, but I do really love it when Vax calls Pike Pickle. I don't know why. It just
Pickle's a good one.
It's a pretty good nickname as far as that goes. Fight ensues, right? Everybody seems to have a role in the fight. We do get a rare occasion where it looks like Percy's gun is actually going to be effective. He shoots Silas right in the shoulder.
He sure does. There's a hole in his shoulder.
A big hole. And then it turns out Silas is Wolverine, because it just closes and heals right up. So, or Deadpool, whatever you choose, whichever your healing factor guy is. That's who Silas is, apparently. And while this is going on, Delilah Briarwood is just throwing spells and shit willy-nilly. So,
black magic out the wazoo.
Whole bunch of it. And by the way, for the group that killed a dragon last episode, they're kind of getting their asses handed to them this episode between Delilah's black magic and Silas's brute force, and then bloodthirsty sword that gets big. By the way, I'm sure there's absolutely no phallic representation that's going here at all, or allegory, but as Silas's sword is wounding Grog as they're going back and forth, it's collecting the blood and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger as it's doing so. Excuse me. Grog is getting ginsued. Grog is not doing well in this particular fight.
Grog is not doing well.
No, and it seems like the rest of them, Percy's gun jams, the arrows that Vex is trying to shoot are completely ineffective. Vax is just totally out of the fight. And then, of course, Scanlan's off singing. Pike sees Grog's having a hard time and decides to essentially supercharge Grog's axe.
Yeah, to kick it up a notch.
And then Delilah sees this and hits Pike from behind with her black magic, and something really important that's going to be a huge factor basically for the rest of the time we see Pike happens.
I would say her little Everlight medallion gets cracked.
Yeah, which seems to, and the look on her face is of horror, like, what am I going to do now? Like, this is my whole world, my whole reason for being is this amulet, and now it's been damaged. This ends up killing that whatever mojo she was hitting Grog's axe with, and Grog also ends up essentially getting beat. So everybody's either ineffective or they have been beaten down at this point, and then something happens that happens quite a bit for the rest of the series.
I would say Keyleth saves them from getting immediately murdered.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, kids. Vox Machina at 100% power is all of them. Vox Machina at 99% power is just Keyleth. So she puts up this huge branching wall that cuts everybody off and allows them to have a separation between the Briarwoods and themselves, and essentially saves them, because then the Briarwoods have decided they hear some guards coming. They're going to beat feet. They get on the carriage.
We got what we came for.
They get
We're
away.
just leaving now.
But on the carriage, their driver was still there. So Silas literally just grabs him and throws him off and says, no, I'll drive. And they take off without their driver, the driver that actually brought them on the carriage to Tal'Dorei in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's when we get a hint of where this plot thread is going to start to go. Because we do learn earlier in the episode that Percy is a Dorolo, who was the ruling family of Whitestone, and he tells the group that the Briarwoods killed his entire family and took everything that was precious away from him, which we got hints of in his opening dream flashback sequence. Percy loses it, basically.
Oh yeah, no. Every character trait that they've been trying to imbue Percy with in the first couple of episodes goes directly out the window, and he loses his shit.
So this is why we were saying earlier, where they're really trying hard to show us, like you just said, that really uptight, conservative, prissy sort of Percy. Well, that guy is gone. He reloads his gun and starts basically shooting this dude, torturing this driver for information. Not just, he knows where the Briarwoods are going. They're clearly going back to Whitestone. In fact, as they were leaving, Lady Briarwood was like, oh, come visit us in Whitestone, Percival. We still have a room for you, or whatever terrible taunting
You're always
she's doing.
welcome home.
That's right. Excuse me. But Percy wants to know why they were there in the first place, as though this dipshit driver is going to have any idea what's happening. And you can see the rest of Vox Machina looking on basically in horror as Percy starts
what
to
is he doing?
Genuinely torture this dude. But then we see this black shadowy mist coming up over him, and then from out of his, I don't know, back something or other, he pulls out the Plague Doctor mask that we saw earlier in the episode, puts it on. His voice drops, get real serious. That black smoke keeps coming up, and then we get like kind of like a profile shot, and there's something really distinctive. Yeah, what was the shadow?
The shadow on the ground of the clawed hand and the beaked face.
It was not Percy. It was clearly something else, and we're getting a hint of what we're going to see. At which point, the constabulary shows up. Essentially, the guard finally gets there after this fight's been going on for however long. Oh, God, the guard gets there. They peel essentially Percy off, and then they arrest Vox Machina just as Scanlan, covered in pie for whatever weird reason, because Scanlan,
he was getting way too into that performance.
He sure was. Comes out and says, man, they were loving it in there. I was killing it. And then he looks up and he utters the last word of the episode. Fuck. So now our guys have been arrested, which again feels a little bit tropey. Clearly they didn't start the fight. Clearly they were getting their ass kicked in the fight, and yet somehow they're the ones that are going to get arrested. I don't know what they're getting arrested for, I guess. I suppose any of the guards that actually saw the fight would know that they were just getting their asses handed to them by the Briarwoods, but maybe not enough people saw like this entire huge castle full of guards and dignitaries and footmen and doormen and bellhops and bouncers. Nobody saw this gigantic 10-minute fight out on the front lawn in the fucking fountain. We wanted to make sure.
No context. All we know is that this dude of Vox Machina is shooting a dignitary's driver.
Yep. So this episode gets real dark at the end, and then of course, like I said, we do get them arrested. So and that's where the episode ends off. And this is, I guess, from what we're seeing, it's funny when we were watching season 3, and we were talking about how each season was just focused on killing the dragon, and we both admitted last week that neither one of us remembered how quickly the dragon was killed.
Yeah, no.
This season's got almost nothing to do with killing the dragon. They figured out it was a dragon in the first episode, and they killed it in the second. We're about to get quite an arc about what's going on in Whitestone and how Percy's tied in.
Yep.
It's a whole thing. This takes a lot longer than it takes for the dragon to get killed, which we weren't remembering correctly when we were thinking about redoing
No, we sure weren't. I think I blocked out how long this plot line goes.
Strap it on this one, kids. By the way, if you're a huge Percy fan, I know, and again, with the understanding that we are rewatching this, so if you're a Percy guy, then this is going to be the arc for you. It really does give him all the character moments that you want to see. It gives him some development of character, and we get to find out why he was so triggered and why he's so hell-bent on vengeance against them and why he was so mad that was denied him, and even what's going on with the mask and the shadow and everything else. We're not going to spoil any of that here, but all of that is going to come to light in this first season. But yes, like you, I forgot how long this particular arc was, how quickly we got there, and how much it's going to take up, I guess, the majority of the first season of the show. So strap in, guys. Megan, any last thoughts or anything that we didn't quite get to? I know there was at least one thing I saw.
I was gonna say it is my obligatory duty to mention that there was some trinket snuggles. At the very first scene, when everybody was sitting around the table, Vex was more awake than most of them, and just saying that Percy needed to relax while she was snuggling Trinket and giving him some head scratches.
Yes, as soon as I saw Trinket on the screen, I'm like, nope, I'll leave that for Megan. She is clearly on Trinket Watch. So for those of you on Trinket Watch with Megan, as we will find out over the course of the series, though, completely disappears in a fight. So Trinket is not, I mean, I guess you wouldn't bring an armored bear to a dignitary ball at the end of the day, but they also hit that ball like they had no idea what was expected of them. So anyways, regardless, like I said, it's going to be a continuing theme or a trope that we just don't get to see trinkets in fights, and maybe we'll talk about that as the series carries on. But anyways, guys, thank you for joining us once again. If you would be so kind, please hit the subscribe down below, throw us a like, and give us a comment. All of that stuff helps propagate our show out to more eyeballs. And by the way, you guys have been watching, and we do appreciate it. Help us out. If you've come across this, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button or leave us a comment. It really helps to get the show in front of more eyeballs. Until then, thank you, Megan. We'll see you next week. Stay geeky, everyone.